The house was already glowing before I even stepped inside. Golden lights draped across the ceiling, soft music floating through every corner, and the smell of expensive perfume mixed with roasted chicken and imported desserts. It was one of those family gatherings where everything looked perfect on the outside, but somehow never felt warm on the inside. I stood at the entrance for a moment, holding my small gift bag a little tighter. It wasn't fancy, no luxury wrapping paper, no shiny logo, just something I had carefully chosen with meaning behind it, something I thought would matter more than the price tag. But I should have known better. As soon as I entered the living room, I felt it, that familiar shift in energy. Conversations paused for half a second, eyes scanned me quickly, and then the polite smiles returned, thin, practiced, and slightly judgmental. And then she saw me, my sister-in-law. She was sitting like she owned the room, dressed in a designer outfit that screamed wealth from every thread. Her bracelet sparkled under the lights, her handbag placed deliberately on the table so everyone could notice the logo. Her eyes landed on my gift bag. "Oh," she said loudly, dragging the sound like it was already disappointing her. "You brought that." A few cousins chuckled softly. The atmosphere tightened. I forced a small smile. "It's just something thoughtful." Before I could even take another step, she stood up and walked toward me, her heels clicking like punctuation marks of judgment. She peeked into my bag without asking. The moment she saw it, she laughed. Not a polite laugh, not a soft one. A sharp, cutting sound designed to be heard by everyone. "Oh my God," she said, turning back to the room. "We only do designer gifts here." That line landed like a slap. A few people laughed again, some awkwardly, some because they didn't want to be on the wrong side of her. I felt heat rise in my face, but I stayed still. She held up my gift slightly, like it was something embarrassing to touch. "This looks like something from a roadside shop," she added. "Did you even try?" My fingers tightened around the strap of my bag. I looked at my brother. He was standing near the sofa, pretending to check his phone, not meeting my eyes, not stepping in, just silent. That silence hurt more than her words. My SIL continued, enjoying the attention now. "Honestly, I don't know why people bring things like this. If you can't afford proper gifts, just don't bring anything. It's better than this." She dropped my gift back into my hands like it was nothing. A cousin whispered something and giggled. Someone else quickly changed the topic, pretending nothing happened. The music kept playing, but the room felt colder. I swallowed hard. For a second, I considered leaving, just turning around and walking out, but my feet didn't move, because I noticed something else. The way she was looking at me wasn't just arrogance, it was habit. This wasn't the first time she had done this to someone, and everyone here had learned to tolerate it. That realization settled inside me quietly. I smiled again, but this time it wasn't forced. "Maybe you're right," I said softly. She raised an eyebrow, surprised I wasn't arguing. I looked around the room, at the laughter that faded too quickly, at the eyes that avoided mine, at my brother, still pretending not to see. Then I added, even softer, "Maybe I just don't think value comes from a logo." For a brief moment, the room went slightly quiet. Her smile twitched, but then she scoffed, turning away like I wasn't worth her attention anymore. "Whatever helps you sleep at night," she said, going back to her conversation. And just like that, I was dismissed, but something inside me didn't feel broken. It felt awake. As I stood there holding my cheap gift, I realized this wasn't just a humiliating moment. It was the beginning of something I couldn't yet name, but I could feel it forming quietly under my skin. After that night, nothing in the house changed on the surface, but everything changed in how I was treated. It started with small things. My calls were answered later. My messages were left on read. When family plans were discussed in group chats, my name was suddenly missing, as if I had quietly erased myself without anyone noticing. At first, I told myself it was just coincidence. People get busy, families drift a little, it happens. But deep down, I knew better, especially when I saw her messages still lighting up the group. My sister-in-law remained the center of everything, sending pictures of her latest designer purchases, tagging locations from high-end restaurants, casually dropping brand names into conversations, like they were part of her identity. And every time she posted something, there was always a comment from someone in the family praising her taste, her style, her standard of living. It was like the world had silently agreed on one rule. Value was measured in labels, and I didn't fit that rule. One evening, I overheard a conversation when I visited my aunt's house. My SIL's voice came through the kitchen phone speaker, loud and confident. "She's just not on our level," she was saying, as if discussing whether some people just don't understand quality. There was a pause, then laughter on the other end. I stood in the hallway, holding a cup of tea that suddenly felt too heavy to carry. "Not on our level." The words followed me home. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying everything: her laugh, the looks, my brother's silence. The silence hurt most because it meant acceptance. He hadn't defended me, not once, but instead of breaking me, something unexpected began forming. Not anger exactly, focus. The next morning, I made a decision without announcing it to anyone. I stopped waiting for invitations. I stopped explaining myself, and slowly, I started rebuilding my life in ways nobody in that house paid attention to. I took extra shifts at work. I learned new skills after hours. I started attending online courses, sometimes staying up late while the rest of the family slept comfortably in their designer comfort zones. Every time I felt tired, I remembered her voice. "We only do designer gifts here." And instead of hurting me now, it pushed me forward. Weeks passed, then months. I changed in ways that didn't show on the surface at first. I wasn't loud about it. I didn't post updates or seek approval. I simply worked quietly, consistently, and with a strange calmness that surprised even me. People stopped noticing me less and started noticing me differently. At work, my ideas were taken seriously. My efforts were acknowledged. A supervisor once told me I had a sharp mind for growth and strategy. Words I had never heard from my own family. At home, however, I became a ghost in my own story. When I visited, conversations still paused briefly when I entered, but now there was something else in the air too. Curiosity, especially from her. My sister-in-law started watching me more closely, not openly, but in small glances that she thought I wouldn't notice. Like she was trying to figure out what I was becoming. Once she even asked with a half smile, "So what are you up to these days? Still working small jobs?" The way she said small was intentional. I simply replied, "Working on things that matter to me." She laughed lightly, but it didn't reach her eyes this time. And I noticed something else. My brother wasn't avoiding me in the same way anymore. He still didn't speak much, but his silence had shifted. It wasn't dismissive now. It was uneasy, like he was starting to see something he didn't understand yet. And I realized then that change doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it grows in silence. In late nights, in ignored messages, in every moment someone assumes you will always stay the same. But I wasn't staying the same anymore. And somewhere deep inside, I could feel the distance between who they thought I was and who I was becoming widening every single day. The invitation came on a Friday evening. Not to me directly, but in the family group chat where I had become more of an observer than a participant. A large celebration was being planned, my cousin's engagement, a high-profile event according to the messages with important guests expected from influential families. And then, almost casually, my SIL added, "Make sure everything looks elegant. We can't have anything ordinary this time." I didn't reply, but I read every word. For a moment, I considered not going. There was peace in staying away, in letting them continue their version of life without my presence disrupting it. But another thought came quietly, stronger than the rest. Maybe it was time they saw what ordinary becomes when it's left alone long enough. So I agreed. The day of the event arrived like a staged production. The venue was extravagant. White drapes, crystal chandeliers, floral arrangements that looked imported from another world. Everything screamed money, taste, and status. And as expected, my sister-in-law was at the center of it all. She moved through the crowd like a director on set, checking decorations, correcting arrangements, instructing caterers with a tone that made it clear she believed she was the authority of beauty itself. She wore a designer dress that shimmered under the lights, her jewelry carefully chosen to catch attention at every angle. She looked satisfied, confident, untouchable until I arrived. I didn't announce myself. I didn't need to. I simply walked in. For a second, nobody noticed. Then someone did, then another. Conversations softened. Heads turned. That familiar ripple of recognition spread through the room. And then she saw me. Her expression shifted instantly, not to surprise, but to amusement. "Oh," she said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "You actually came." A few people chuckled politely. She walked toward me, eyes scanning me the same way she had done before, but this time something was different. I wasn't holding a cheap gift bag. I wasn't standing uncertainly near the entrance. I wasn't trying to fit in. I was just calm. That seemed to bother her more than anything else. "You look different," she said slowly, dragging the words like she was searching for something to criticize. "People change," I replied simply. She smiled, but it was sharp. "Let's hope it's for the better." Then she leaned slightly closer, lowering her voice just enough for me to hear, but still pretending to be polite. "Just try not to stand out too much tonight. We have important people here." I looked at her for a moment, and then I smiled, not the kind that defends itself, but the kind that understands everything. "I'll keep that in mind," I said. She seemed satisfied, as if she had once again placed me exactly where she believed I belonged. But what she didn't notice was how people were reacting to me differently now. Not loudly, not dramatically, subtly. A few guests I didn't recognize were watching me with interest. Some nodded in acknowledgement. One man even approached briefly, shaking my hand as if he knew me from somewhere he respected. My SIL noticed none of this at first, because she was too busy performing her version of perfection. But my brother noticed. He stood near the stage, watching me longer than he should have. His expression wasn't neutral anymore. It was unsettled, like he was trying to connect pieces he had never bothered to look at before. For the first time, I saw him hesitate before looking away. And in that hesitation, I understood something important. The story they believed about me, the ordinary one, the less than one, was starting to break. Not loudly, not yet, but cracks were forming, and all it takes for a structure built on assumptions is a little pressure in the right place. I didn't come here to prove anything, but somehow, without trying, I had already stopped being invisible. The evening reached its peak when the lights dimmed slightly and the formal program began. Music softened, guests settled into their seats. The engagement ceremony was about to transition into speeches and acknowledgments, the part where families usually showcased pride, status, and carefully curated gratitude. My sister-in-law stood near the front, glowing under the chandelier light like she belonged on a magazine cover. She had already taken control of most of the event, guiding conversations, greeting influential guests, and making sure everyone noticed her presence. She kept glancing at me between interactions, still that same expression, confident, superior, certain. As if I were still the same person from the night of the cheap gift, my brother stood a few steps behind her. He looked different tonight, not relaxed, not dismissive. Something quieter had taken over him. His eyes kept shifting between me and the people around me, as if he was trying to understand a puzzle he had ignored for too long. Then the announcement came. A special guest was being introduced. My SIL straightened immediately, smoothing her dress. She clearly assumed it was someone from her circle, someone important enough to reinforce her carefully built image of status. The host called the name, and the room changed, not loudly, not dramatically, but instantly. A shift in attention, a pause in conversation, a collective curiosity that rippled through the guests, and then I stepped forward. At first there was confusion, a few polite smiles, assuming I was simply going to assist or stand nearby. My SIL even gave a small, approving nod, as if allowing me a moment of visibility. But then I walked further. Toward the stage, toward the microphone, the nods stopped, the smiles froze, and my brother, he went pale. I saw it the moment realization hit him. Not confusion anymore. Not curiosity. Recognition. He knew. Not everything, not all the details, but enough to understand that something about me no longer fit the story they had been telling themselves. My SIL whispered sharply, "What is he doing?" But no one answered her, because I was already speaking. Not loudly, not dramatically, just clearly. I introduced myself, not as a guest, not as a distant relative, but as someone who had built something quietly over time. Projects, work, partnerships, the kind of success that doesn't rely on logos on a bag or labels on a dress, but on results people cannot ignore once they see them. The room listened, not because I demanded it, but because the people there recognized names, industries, and connections I mentioned. Subtle reactions began spreading through the crowd. A few heads turned toward each other, whispered confirmations. Quiet acknowledgments. My SIL's expression shifted for the first time. Confidence cracked slightly at the edges. She laughed once nervously. This is some kind of joke, right? But nobody laughed with her. Because the man she had dismissed before, the one she called ordinary, was now being greeted by people she had spent years trying to impress. And they were greeting me first. My brother stepped forward slowly, like his body was moving before his thoughts could catch up. His face was pale, eyes fixed on me in a way that held disbelief and regret tangled together. He finally understood what silence had cost him. My gaze met his for a brief moment, no anger, no revenge spoken out loud, just truth. Then I looked at her. My sister-in-law stood completely still now. The confidence that once filled her every movement had drained, replaced by something she had never worn before. Uncertainty. For the first time, she wasn't the center of attention. She was outside it. The irony was almost too simple. The designer world she worshipped didn't disappear. It just stopped mattering in the presence of something real. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult anyone. I didn't need to, because success has a way of speaking without permission, and it speaks louder than laughter ever can. When I stepped away from the microphone, the room didn't erupt. It simply adjusted, as if reality had quietly rewritten itself in front of everyone. And as I walked back down, I noticed something I didn't expect. My SIL wasn't looking at me anymore. She was looking at my brother, And for the first time in the entire story, he couldn't look back,